I hear them coming near, their heart it beats with fear. They say my name in shame. My words they were abused, my healing they misused, and now I stand accused. They came to light the flame, they came to watch me hang and burn my gifts away. But once the smoke's removed, my body's been abused. My soul is watching you. My sisters, we have come, the old and ancient ones, return to bring anew. We won't go in your flame, no, none of us will hang. Our voices we reclaim. The burned witches come, gather everyone, and hear what we do say.
Welcome to Burnt Witches. I'm Abby Lynn, your host for this limited series podcast, season 2, you guys. And this is where history rises from the ashes and comes back to you in a modern way. Here we discuss all things labeled magic, esoteric, and spiritual, looking to dispel myths. We meet brave souls who came here to help heal and educate. But now we take our first step back in time with a quick fact. This season, this show, we're going to Irish. And today's quick fact is how Ireland was actually kind of ignored largely during the witch trials. And it kind of spared the great wrath of it. They didn't see as many deaths as Scotland and Europe did. And this is the reason. There's actually two: religion and social structure. So Ireland was predominantly Catholic, and witch hunts tended to be more severe amongst the Protestant religions, especially after Reformation. And the second thing that helped Ireland was their tight-knit and rural communities that you see there. And that played a really big role because a lot of the personal grievances that were dealt, they just settled those locally and they settled them amongst themselves rather than bringing in these big formal accusations and having these big trials. But today's show's dedication is towards, because even though they were largely spared, there were men and women who did face persecution. And so today we dedicate the show to Petronilla de Meath. She was the first woman in Ireland to be executed for witchcraft all the way back in 1324. She preceded the trials by almost 200 years, but her story still carries on to this day. Petronilla was the maidservant of a wealthy woman named Alice Keitler. Now, Alice plays a significant role in this story as she was the original person that was accused of sorcery. See, Alice had been married 4 times, with each husband leaving Alice with significant amounts of wealth. As you guys have seen, money plays a big role in a lot of these trials. The stepchildren accused Alice of sorcery, performing rituals and poisoning their fathers. But you see, by this time, Alice had wealth and influence on her side. She fled Ireland and was never heard from ever again. However, her poor maidservant, Petronilla, didn't have Alice's good fortune, her literal good fortune. So she bore the brunt of the accusations and was imprisoned and tortured. Under duress, Petronilla admitted to aiding Alice in magical practices, but history has shown that her confession was likely coerced and forced under severe torture. I mean, they dehydrate you and you start to hallucinate. You're going to do anything for survival. In November of 1324, Petronilla de Neath was found guilty of witchcraft and publicly burned at the stake. She was one of the earliest victims in Europe, and her death served as a reminder to women as a warning. Now, I want to pivot as we start to introduce today's guest. I want to explore how they didn't just persecute individuals, but how they attacked something so much deeper, and that is the divine, the true essence of the divine feminine. For centuries, women who embodied healing, wisdom, and spiritual power were often branded as witches. The trials silenced female voices, destroyed traditional knowledge, and fueled a fear of women's autonomy and sexuality. By targeting midwives, healers, and independent women, these events were more than just a tragic injustice. They were a direct assault on feminine energy, our intuition, and spiritual wisdom. In this episode, we will uncover how the witch trials affected the divine feminine, stripping away our natural connection to healing, nature, and spiritual authority, and how the impact of that era is still felt today. And I cannot think of a better guest who completely embodies that than Z, the founder and guardian of Earthstar Academy. Through the arts of prayer, oracle transmission, singing, writing, and multidimensional energy work, Z is here to support humanity in reclaiming our infinite creativity through the healing of our multidimensional light body and creation sexuality. Z teaches you how to access your higher consciousness, walk in union with God, heal yourself, and lead a miracle-filled life. Z, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here, and I can already feel I'm tearing up already, so it's going to be a good one.
I'm sweating so bad already. The energy just in the past 2 years, just 2 years. I mean, it's been building and building and building, but it's really been droning in heavy of it is time. It is time for the feminine to reclaim. I like our authority, our spiritual authority of being the creation beings that we are. And I know that you just spent a beautiful time in Ireland, in the UK, leading group of people. And I would love to hear how the energy felt there, what the activations were. I would just love for you to share.
Yeah, so I think it was actually a really beautiful story. This whole journey of us going to Ireland came through last September when my husband and I were kind of on this journey of figuring out through our curiosity, what true God was, kind of in a sense, because in the religious texts, they often talk about this male God, and in society, there's so much of this masculine God. And, in our spiritual community, there's a lot of, talk about the goddess, and almost as if like the Holy Mother is the complete fullness of God. And so we were kind of like, well, it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like, what is even God? And when we began to track this energy, it just took us on this beautiful adventure, this love story, this realization that God is something that is actually eternal outside of the realms of fracturing, outside of the realms of duality, where almost, these forces of creation, we can say Holy Mother, Holy Father, they actually exist eternally in union. And when we begin to track this energy, feeling into this eternal realms of peace, of love that we felt was like pulling us in. We were kind of curious to know what God was, and this force was just pulling us into this field of remembrance of God. And throughout that process, we ended up conceiving our son. And through my son, he, started showing us visions of Ireland, and particularly this year was 2024, so it was an 8 year. And so he started showing us this 888 ceremony that he wanted to, for us to hold on the hill of Tara, which, if you've seen, is literally this figure 8. So it was like 888 on the hill of Tara. And he kind of took us on this journey. I checked in. I'm like, you want to be born in Ireland? That's kind of crazy because, we're Canadians. We live in Costa Rica. I've personally never been to Europe before. So the idea of giving birth, is somewhere that I've never even conceived was kind of intense. But he was due on the solstice in June, and we had planned for this conference in August. And so all throughout the time when I was pregnant with him and we were preparing for this conference, which was just amazing. There was 150 people that came from all over the world. We had a lot of Irish people that showed up because so much of the downloads that I was receiving around this grid work was kind of actually what Ireland was holding on the planetary level. So, we talk about how humans have a destiny and humans have a mission, but a lot of land have a mission too. And different land, some people might want a healing center and they get called to a piece of land and then they become stewards of that land. They realize that each kind of land has its unique incarnations of consciousness as well, kind of like humans are individuals. Like every mountain has their unique personalities, certain land masses have that as well. And so I started finding out that in the times of Pangea, when all the land masses were still one body, and it looks like this little fetal baby dragon. If you've ever seen a picture of Pangea, it literally looks like a little baby dragon in an egg. And Mother Earth showed me that this was her kind of inner fetal child self, her in her most original divine innocence. And Ireland at that time was actually in her thymus, in her high heart. And so when I began to find these things out, Mother Earth was showing me that the high heart, of course, when we look into our light body, is the place where our master cell is kept. Our master cell is this master genetic sequence that holds all of our soul's libraries of our skills, our gifts, our past lives, our blueprint, our true original template is stored in that high heart. And so you think about the fetal original body, the original consciousness of Mother Earth, and stored in that high heart is, of course, her highest divine blueprint, which holds the highest divine blueprint of humanity and animals and everything that is held within her. And so us going to Ireland, the whole thing was really about divine union, was about, remember how the story began of just wanting to know this answer, right? Wanting to understand, is God female? Is God male? What is it? And then why has there been so much warring against the masculine and the feminine? And, my son, he's coming in from the God world. He's coming in from these places where the star children come from. And these babies, they have very low, they have very high standards, let's say, for, coherence and true blueprints and very low, what's the word? They have a low threshold for distortion.
Yeah.
Right. And this was what was needed for our mission because it's almost like there are all of these viruses that have been seeded into human consciousness that split the gender principles apart. And the way that we tell stories is so important because so far I feel like we've been telling stories like, oh, look what the men did. All of these men, they tortured us and I don't know, I need a censor. I don't want to get your show censored or anything like that. But yeah, we got tortured and look at what happened to us. And we kind of almost blame the masculine. We say that, oh, God, it's because this male version of God fell and he doesn't love us anymore. And for some reason, Ireland was so strong in communicating these codes. It was just so active the whole time we were getting ready. And when we were there as well, I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I had this one day where I had just this intense pain in my hip. And I'm used to going into my body for this healing and stuff. I know this is kind of a ramble, but we're getting somewhere. There's a story we're going towards. So I go in there, I go into my body. I'm like, what is this pain? I'm crippled over. And I had this part come up, and it was like this intense hatred for men. Absolute immense hatred for men and the masculine and what they'd done to me in all these lifetimes because even in this lifetime, I've gone through a lot of trauma, sexual trauma. This is why a lot of my work, so much of my work now is with women, healing those traumas. And so even from this lifetime and in other lifetimes, so much of what's been done to me, the harm that's been done to me, has been by the hands of men, right? So it would make sense for my fractured human self to have such an immense hatred for men. And there's my son in his golden orb form, right? He's just like absolute solar radiance and peace. And he just says to me as I'm like whirling around on the bed, like in so much pain, he's like, do you hate me too? And I just start weeping. Here is this divine masculine presence that I love so much. He's my son. And he's showing me that I had this pain in my body that was really skewing the way that I was perceiving and I was telling the story in what has happened on the earth. And this was kind of the rehabilitation, right? The healing that had to happen, because I feel like there is, because of these traumas, a really strong slant in our spiritual community, to the point where if these traumas are not resolved, then a lot of the divine feminine leaders start to steer towards the opposite end of the spectrum. That, oh, Holy Mother is God, and Holy Mother gave birth to God, and Holy Mother is the only God. And, we hate the masculine. It's a very subtle but deeply subconscious essence. And Ireland was bringing this up because, the guardian goddess of Ireland, her name is Eru. And so much of the local mythology and their native spirituality are based in these sovereignty gods and goddesses. And the ancient original stories were all about divine union. And actually, I had this my friend Zoe, who's the founder of Eru Wool. She was kind of my Nancy Drew sister as I was there. Oftentimes we were just getting visions and dreams and we talked to each other about it. And we were tracking how these mythological stories were then fractured and told in this fallen way. Mm-hmm. To specifically use these traumas as a way to further fracture divine union, actually. And if we look at these, we talk about like the witch trials and these spiritual weapons, let's say, the spiritual weapons on human consciousness to strip us of our original memory and our original architecture of a divine human's relationship with human and earth and our life and spirituality and all those things. The witch hunt and organized religion and all of these distortions in human spirituality are these weapons set upon humanity so that humans can't what? So that humans can't what? So that humans can't connect to the true God, so that we can be truly free and truly accessing our highest as human beings. And so, we were working so much with the ancient goddess energies that were so present on that land. I love that you said that Ireland was really spared in comparison to Scotland and the UK, which we also journeyed around. I think Scotland has the highest numbers of the witch burnings. But I think the reason why Ireland was so protected is because of that, original architecture that is held in the land that people are very connected to. The Irish people really deeply feel something very special about Ireland and about being guardian to that energy. And I feel like this is even just the continuation of this healing. It's really about the healing of not only the feminine, not only like this rebellious, traumatized feminine that is wanting to rise into power and stomp out the masculine, but really this feminine that's willing to truly heal and come back into peace and radiance and compassion, to recognize that, what has happened to the masculine in it of itself was sort of a rape. That the masculine, the original masculine, the high king masculine, which is of course embedded in so many of Ireland's ancient stories, that high king consciousness was what was coming through so much. But that the high king, the god king, the oracle king could never lay a hand on a woman, that his purpose is to be a divine guardian, a protector. We say land husbandry. When a farmer is in love with the land, he cultivates and touches the land with so much love in his body. And that holy original blueprint of the masculine has actually also been incredibly violated for us to end up in this reality that we are now. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the story of Ireland as I like to tell it now. So I'll just quit my yap in for a minute.
Um, Going back to the divine masculine years ago when I was connecting in with Gaia, essentially when she was kind of, the image always was like a dog, like shaking all the water off, right? She was trying to release. I saw cradled within her all of the pain of the masculine over all of these centuries of war, all the men being called up. And I spent probably about a week every day just crying because I felt the masculine, what they had been pushed into themselves. And then to go, I also have a son, and seeing their true nature, the blueprint of which they are born with, nobody loves a mommy like her son. It really truly is. I mean, my girls love me, but my son is my true nurturer of his mother. I mean, ever since I remember when he was, I think he was about like 4 years old, he figured out how to use our little like Keurig coffee maker. And so he would get up in the morning and go, and I could hear him making a little coffee. So I just stayed in bed, let him, and he would come down his little feedy jammies and he would say, "Mommy, I made you your coffee." And he always put like a secret ingredient, which is usually cinnamon. That was his secret ingredient. And so I had to like take a sip, and my thing was like, "That's a good cup of Joe." And then he would come in and we would snuggle and fall back to sleep for like 30 minutes. But it's their natural blueprint to be nurturing to the feminine. and
Yes.
and so I can relate in such a deep level of everything that you are explaining, because when you see from a child, that is straight from creation what they're coming in to do. And it's that balance. We're both nurturing each other and seeing that beautiful yin yang. I mean, there's a reason why this is that. It's the balance.
Yeah.
And even just within, so I have my son and now I have my grown husband, and we do work in, and sometimes they're like, "Why are you pushing me into my masculine? I don't want to be in my masculine. This is why I've been feeling so off. Like, you need to take some things off of me." And so when we work in that balance as well, which is within our coupling, and I think even through the trials and everything, I mean, men and women equally participated in the persecution and the accusations and bringing this about. But it's finding that union again. And so many of these forces, even today, even for the past few decades, has been about pulling apart that union.
Yes. I love everything that you just shared so much. Especially pointing out the fact that, so equally men and women were part of that accusational energy, because I definitely feel like trauma is what they use to split us up. And again, it's about the telling of the story, right? So many women tell the story like, "Oh, the men, did these things and that it, ruined the Holy Mother," and all of these traumas, and they're blaming the men in the reality. And it's actually Satan loves that. The demons love that, because so long as we're doing that, we can't come back into a human right relationship so we can defeat the evil on this planet together. We need men to defeat evil. If there's one thing that we're learning.
We do. And I would love to, what is in terms of what you see, what you feel, and what you are seeing from just the land and the general blueprint of this era? I'm going to try to word this right. How can the feminine, because I've been noticing for the past couple of years, the really vocal ones during kind of I just call it the blip, right? I refuse to call it anything other than that. The feminine really stepped up, and we really used our voices strongly, especially for the children. And I was viewing some of the masculine didn't really kind of step up a little bit as much as I expected them to. How can the feminine encourage the masculine to step up again, because they have largely been silenced and attacked over the past few decades through just culturally they've been essentially sit down, shut up, and sit back in the corner where you belong. That's really what we've been pushing on them for decades now, and for a reason. So but we need them, as you said, we need them to step back up. So I'm trying myself, okay, how can we energetically do this? Because at the same time, I'm hearing it's time for the wise woman to step in, the wise, for that to come in. But whenever I see that, we're not over anybody. It's our energy and our voices encouraging the masculine to come up too. And we are together on the platform.
Yeah, this is a great question. It really makes us ask the question, like, what does a raised up woman look like? Right? Because in our society, it's a very convoluted reality. So we don't have any rites of passage. So a lot of women are never actually evolving past, immature maiden consciousness. And that maiden consciousness is blaming, right? And that complaining, blaming energy is a woman that's actually not fully anchored in the wisdom of her womb, in the vast creational prayer, song, frequency of her womb. So when a woman is actually deeply grounded in her womb, she can see all of the angles of the situation, right? And so then we see that, okay, so you have to understand that in order for this evil force to control humanity, it had to eradicate the masculine. Because in order for the women to be vulnerable to these hijacks and siphonings, the men had to be out of the way, right? So you look at these wars, you were saying processing pain of war, every few generations, they just wipe out all of the child rearing aged men through a war. Yeah. How many civilizations have we gone through, all over the world, where in the blank of a couple of years, all of the men are now incredibly traumatized, right? And that trauma is like in the blood, it's in the body, it's passed down generationally. And then on top of that, we have this incredible chemical warfare on testosterone and also on the hormone systems of women. But I feel like this, specifically, there is an agenda to emasculate the men for specifically the reason of human society domination and control. So it also stimulates the women, right? It tricks the women. It says, okay, you can be free. Look at all this freedom that you can have. And this begins to destabilize the values, the right values that creates a stable civilization, like free sexuality and whatever else, eroding the family values, and continue to show women. It's almost tricking women through our trauma, through this part of us that does hate men, that does have this deep pain towards the masculine. And this demonic force is like, well, wouldn't you want to just, eradicate them? Wouldn't you want to just be more powerful than them? Wouldn't you want to just, feel like women are the most powerful beings? It's a very tricky, demons are very tricky like that, right?
I want to add part of this, the over sexualization. So I do want to talk about that sexual energy, and the feminine has been tricked into thinking that having numerous partners, this is this sexual liberation. This is how you exude your power as a woman, is to have all of these partners. But we lack the spiritual understanding of every partner that your womb receives, you hold a piece of, and that creates energetic chaos.
Yes, absolutely. And, a true husband, in the true architecture is someone that is meant to create a cover of God's love and peace around your life. I feel like those dynamics are so lost and misconstrued, even in like the polarity teachings, so much of it is actually fetishize trauma, if I can just speak that bluntly, you know. But back to your question about how to actually support the men, I feel like so much of it is helping them feel safe enough, you know, to actually remember who they are and to face the kinds of trauma that they've undergone as well. I feel like it's been easier for women in a way because of our constitution, because the fact that we have a womb and we have more water in our body, right? Because water is the conduit of spirit. And there's a reason why women bodies are generally have more fat content. And there's a reason why we're told to hate fat, you know, because our fat, our water, our plasma is actually what is connecting us to our Holy Mother wisdom, that anchors the wisdom and the cosmic consciousness. And you know, obviously not to extreme levels, and there's toxicity and there's obesity and all those things as well, but I'm saying looking at the ancient sculptures of a beautiful woman's body is always very voluptuous, and the reason is it represents the water and the wisdom in a woman's body. And so we're so much more sensitive. We've been allowed to keep our emotionality, even though that's kind of been hijacked. Whereas like men have been programmed to say, you know, you can't cry, don't feel your emotions, all those things. And so what happened through the awakening is that, you know, I know when something happens to me, I've got 6 girlfriends on speed dial that I can call. And I'm like talking to them about the stuff and I'm processing and we're getting downloads and it's so natural for us to do that. And then I'm looking at my husband and he has some amazing healing happens and he's like sitting there by himself. He has nobody to call because the brothers just aren't really doing, and I feel like it's really starting now. But you know, the reason why they're kind of lagged isn't because they're not as smart, isn't because they're not as sacred, isn't because they're not as powerful, but it's just because the way that society and the programming has been set up has been much more difficult for them to wake up from the spells and the programming than it has been for women.
Yeah.
And so seeing that it is happening, and that when we anchor into the womb wisdom and we truly see men for who they really are, right? What the true blueprint of men truly are, and you hold that and you say, I trust that, I trust you, right? I remember who you are. And when we come from that place where men can feel safe, then they'll rise up into the space. Whereas if we're coming from this complaint, like, oh, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you, you know, waking up? This is why you're not as great, or whatever it is. And we come from that like anti-mother, but smothering energy that actually emasculates them, and the demons will play into that as well.
Yeah. I have a number. I'm just like you. I have my friends, you know, on speed dial when, you know, like, why am I doing this? One of my friends did I went and laid underneath. I have this tree in my backyard and I call her the mother, because she literally looks like a naked woman, like that's looking over her shoulder, even has like a bosom where a limb had fallen down. And what's so beautiful is actually every year a raccoon, she keeps all of her babies. She has all of her babies. You just, the babies come out and I love her. I just love her. So I laid underneath of her because I was just feeling my energy was a little bit depleted. So my friend like, go lay underneath the tree and I'll send you some energy. But the friends I have there, because their divine union partner has allowed us to step in and embody this work that we're doing, and we're stepping into our true femininity, into our spiritual sovereignty, our knowingness. What I've noticed is the spouses, you know, like my husband, for instance, his psychic abilities have really come on extremely strong. And he's now able to use some of his knowingness in his business you know, this is now carrying over into his business meetings, and the clients and the people he is meeting, what he is now attracting naturally are spiritually aligned people. And that's all coming in a very, what you would perceive as, oh, they're all businessmen, you know, like successful entrepreneurs, businessmen, but they're all having these very high level esoteric spiritual conversations. You'll come back from being gone for 3 days and you're like, you'll never believe who I just spent 3 days with, and you know what we talked about. So, but yeah, and, you know, so when the masculine creates a space that is safe and nurturing for us to become the empowered feminine, then they reap those rewards because then they get turned on as well. And then that is spread because they have a strong voice and they're able to do that. It's what I've just witnessed in my own life. Yeah, I love seeing that. How can, I know so many people that, you have been to Ireland. I know that you're doing this beautiful retreat in Costa Rica, a 10-day long holding space there. And I myself, I'm doing Egypt. I'm now looking at doing Cambodia and Scotland. So just being called to go into the lands. How large of a role in this time, because I'm seeing almost 50-50 of us benefiting the world, the planet, as a sentient being, and then the sentient being also helping us ignite. I would love to have your views of how you view that.
Yeah, grid work is one of the most powerful ways of prayer, and prayer is a way that you can basically call forth cosmic energy and allow God to have a higher ability to create higher timelines on the planet. So when you pray about something, you're actually opening a channel so that more of God's consciousness can reach right into that place of the thing that you're praying for, which is why prayer is, the most powerful gift and tool that you have on your mission. And I would say that grid work is one of the most powerful forms of prayer, because what you're doing is you're working directly, I'd say, behind the matrix, right? Every single thing on the earth is connected to each other through the earth, and the earth is almost vibrating this collective consciousness, the Schumann resonance, whatever you want to call it. And the ley lines, they carry this consciousness around the planet. And the ley lines were originally built by the angelics to be a collective evolutionary tool. So that means when the sun is radiating in these evolutionary codes, then the ley lines and bringing them all around the planet and giving them to every single thing that lives on the planet. This is why you'll see these evolutionary ages, kind of evolution happens in these blips on the planet, right? Not all at once. I mean, not consistently, but like you'll see like grass grow and then grass appears all over the planet. And then, something else will appear. And how that happens is genetic sequences are coming in from the sun and they're being proliferated through the planet through the ley lines. Now, this is why there are military bases and fallen churches and universities and football stadiums and all of these places that anchor a really strong severed consciousness, right? Severed from God, false matrix consciousness, and also human trafficking routes. And they have, inner earth bases where ritual abuse occurs. Like all of these things are located in these grid locations so that it keeps human consciousness low. So understanding of the ley lines is nothing new. The Druids, the Essenes, the ancient Christians, the Native Americans, ancient people all over the world have been actually migrating on these ley lines, have been building stone circles and temples on these ley lines, and even wrote about convergences that tribes would follow these ley lines from all over the world and meet at these node points. So this has been happening. This is a very deeply ingrained part of human beings in our relationship to the earth, actually. And so obviously the evil people then also stole this knowledge and began to use it as a technology of planetary mind control. And so in this current time, there are this new ley line system that's coming online. They're called the Dragon Lines. And a lot of this work, if you're interested, you can look up. His name is Rory Duff. He was one of the keynote speakers at our conference in Ireland. It was really like a planetary grid work, planetary energy work conference. Incredibly knowledgeable scientific man. He was the man that first discovered this new ley line system, because basically when you measure them, they measure like a certain width, because ley lines, like they undulate like this. So traditionally the ley lines, let's say they would undulate and create a cycle over 12 hours. He found that these new ley lines would undulate and take 36 hours. So they were much, much bigger than any other ley line, even the primary ley lines that he was discovering before. And then they were discovering that the ley lines actually come from this subatomic quantum gravitational sound field from the center of the earth, which, the psychics, we've been like, oh, like things are happening from the core of the earth, right? The crystalline grid is coming from the core of the earth. And now these scientists are like, these sound fields are coming out from the center of the earth and they become activated by galactic and cosmic energy. And we're like, oh, we already knew that. You guys are catching up now. But yeah, this is why we're going to these places because, first off, we're transiting, right? The old grids are coloring human consciousness. It's creating this cymatic field of human consciousness around the world. And these new ley line, this dragon ley line system is to be fully activated by the end of 2024. It's funny, we're in the dragon year right now. It's taking its time because if it just came online all of a sudden, people would be in psychosis. It would just be way too much energy. So it's actually slowly been happening since 2017. But part of this is, collapsing and closing off old energies, transiting old energies, and, aligning these structures to the original timelines and these new ley lines. A lot of star seeds carry these keys and sequences in our soul and in our DNA that the ley lines actually need because, again, like you were saying, we work together. And so there are certain star seeds that are what we call timekeepers. The timekeepers, and I'm really leaning out of, like, I'm going through this interesting departure from the new age, let's say, because I'm discovering that so much of the starseed mythology is actually very biblical, right? And we're actually being birthed out of this cocoon of the new age back into reality where there's just something very planetary, very biblical, very divine, very prophetic that is happening on the planet right now. And so really the star seeds are the angelics, the angelic emissaries that, we're going through this process of realigning again to actual God. A lot of starseeds lose their way when they're channeling beings and worshiping deities, but really what we need to do is find the eternal God in the core of our heart so that we can find that true signal. And then we realize that we have these timekeeping codons in our DNA, which allow us to send these signals into the earth and unlock these timelines, unlock these realities, because it needs to be an organic process. We are kind of the eyes and ears and hands of God down here in this dimension. Yeah. So this is why we're going to these places, and it's creating planetary impact. This new consciousness, for example, when we were doing this union consciousness, right? It's like we were really working on these unconscious programs in the collective consciousness, right? And when we correct these distortions and we anchored these higher, coherent, true blueprints, then that's what's being cycled out into the collective consciousness. Now, people, in wherever else in the world, I don't know, in China, in India, in places we can't get to, but those people are going to get these codes because they're being carried through these planetary energy lines.
Absolutely. I was smiling when you were speaking. The dragon showed me the ley lines a while ago, and it was he came up and he said we're activating the ley lines, and he kind of turned his head like this, and he plucked one of them with his little claw, and it was like dee, and it was a sound frequency. But then when he plucked it, it was, and he's like there are different ley lines that are activating the different elementals that are going around. And so the one he plucked, it went green. It was like green all around. And it was like an earth line, right? And but he was just so cheeky, and he was like, ding, and I just saw this ley line reverberation in this sound. And he said, he's like, he goes, it's time to activate the dragon ley lines. And so I get excited when you bring in a lot of confirmation, and there's, different people I've worked with and are like, oh, for these kids that are coming on, and they have a really big key inside of them. And it's this, like, when the moment awakens, they're just going to know. It's just this strong knowing that's just going to come from them, and they just know what to do. It's always been like, you're just going to know what to do because it's going to come through. And I'm really excited for that moment. can you feel the different? I can feel the different, almost, I want to say, like aspects of our oversoul of everything is just, it comes in from my back, right? It's just coming in and coming in and coming in, and things are locking in, and these memories are coming through, and it's interesting. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, yes, I love it. How have you seen, because a lot of people, when they question any of the spirituality or the esoteric, like, why should I even turn on these abilities? Like, why should I even work on this? Or how does this benefit me? How has magic changed your life? How do you use that in your life?
Yeah, so it all started for me when I realized that there was a lot of turmoil in the world. I first woke up in 2012, and the way that I woke up was I would just sit on the bus and I noticed that people were just not happy at all. And I was like, I just felt like my skin crawling. Like it was just weird. Like it wasn't supposed to be like that. Like I had this remembrance inside of me. I remember us like coming together in these banquets and there's music playing and we're singing by the river and everything was so wondrous, and this planet was really made for that kind of reality. And so when I was sitting on the bus and people were so lethargic and not in their bodies and was not happy at all, I was like, there's something wrong with that. And I just had this feeling in my heart that I was supposed to do something about it, like that was like part of my purpose somehow. And then eventually it just wore me down so much that I just prayed about it. I realized that my limited human self had very few ways of really truly knowing, anything about the world. I just have a limited human brain, but God knows everything, and our Mother Earth knows everything. And so I just went and I just fell on my knees in the forest one day, and I just wept. I wept for all the people that I saw and for the turmoil and the chaos and the pain in the world. And I was like, I don't even know if God exists, but if God does exist, can you just like use me, please? Because I just have this desire in my heart to help in some way. And then I was very shocked that the earth actually just started talking to me because I didn't, at that time even know that Mother Earth or, God was something that I could have a personal relationship with.
Mhm.
And so over time, really began to develop that relationship. Again, just knowing that we have a purpose as a soul, we have an intention of why we incarnated here. And in order for us to fully bring that through in our life, we can't do it on our own, right? We say we can't do God's mission without God, even though to this day, you still catch me trying to do it sometimes, because humans, we're stubborn and it's hard to learn sometimes. But yeah, because when we start to connect to God, um, things will start to shed, especially misconceptions. And when you said, how can magic benefit me? Well, magic doesn't benefit you. Magic is not for benefiting. Magic is, for me, creation magic. Let's be specific because there's other fallen kinds of magic. Creation magic is really when you align with God's prophecy for your soul. And then it looks like magic, but you're really not doing anything but just being in the stream of your soul's co-creation with God for you. Um, yeah, I was just like, man, I can just really ramble. I
No,
can.
it's great. I mean, I love that. I love that you brought that up, that magic isn't about benefiting you. It's the word, I'm just using the word magic for the podcast, but how I view it is how does energy, how did calling that in, and I want to do this like when I opened up and called in and understood my light body, which is our energy field. That was when I was able to see how I can benefit
Yes.
everything around me, and how I can be a mutual partner with the land, with the animals, with the bugs and the birds, and my family and my friends, and just the my fellow human beings, my Terrans that are here.
Yeah, and I could really feel that. I feel like you're like one of the people that I really connected with, throughout my journeys through the new age, because I felt like you always had just like such an innocence inside of you that like just connected with the organic elemental realms. And I feel like that probably has to do with like the druid ancestors and your connection to, you know, the Fey realms and all of those
Yeah.
things.
I always joke that for every worm that I save, because when I go on walks, I always look for worms that are stuck on the sidewalks and they can't make it back. You literally see me out there and I'll be like, no, baby, no. And like, let me get you. I'm trying to help you. And I take it over to the grass. But I always say, like, for every worm that I save, that when I'm in my soul review and they're looking at like anytime I have like road rage, I'll be like, just look at worm 42. And I cleared it out.
That's hysterical.
But yes, I don't know, this memory is coming in, and this is one of my favorite stories, working with angelics in nature. There was this bird that had not moved for a few weeks in my neighborhood, and they were a species that when they lose their partner, and especially around location, that they get so lost in grief that they lose their ability to it overrides their instinct to find food and to continue on. And this beautiful bird was there, one of these really big white ospreys that are down here by the ocean. And for 3 weeks, we had seen this bird always in the same spot. And I was on my walk, and I saw the same bird. He flew at eye level right by me, because he stayed within this like 200-yard space on the road. He didn't move from it. And so he flew right by me. And when I saw him land, I actually called on Haniel. And Haniel is an archangel that's come through multiple times to help. And so I called on Haniel and I said, can you please talk to his heart? Can you please help him work through this? Because I didn't want to see this beautiful bird die. And I saw just this light, and I saw this bird stopped, and he turned and he walked towards the middle of the road. Now I could see what he was looking at, and she was there on one knee, and she was at eye level, just this light, this energy working with him. And the next day I drove by, and I never saw that bird there again.
Wow.
And this is the part of, like you said, we sometimes forget to ask for their help, right? Because we think we're humans and like, oh, we're not deserving of their help, or we don't think to ask to come and work with them. And it is the reminder of, in that moment, I needed help. And so I asked for them to step forward and to work with that bird. And so this is how, like, don't forget to ask for help and to ask to work together, because amazing, beautiful things can happen.
Yes. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. That to me, that's how, an instance of how I see magic. And it's just it's heartwarming for me. And it's like, how could anybody deny this? How could anybody not want that in their life, to be able to move energy in that way?
Yeah, this is actually opening up to this conversation that I saw come in like earlier on in our discussion about how complex it actually really is, because we talk about how it's almost like our society wants to oversimplify everything so that things are black and white, so that things can hide, right? Because you think about witchcraft and how people can be like, even in the person that you were talking about in the beginning of the podcast today, about how they had 4 marriages and they could have been using black magic to, for selfish gain. And what do we do as a society when things like that happen? And then, we're realizing that actually there is a horrific evil magic happening on this planet to levels that most human beings cannot even fathom. And yet somehow this force is also gaslighting the people that aren't even doing that kind of magic, right? Like so many of the witches that we hear about, like, we're midwives, we're herbalists. It's almost like this force is creating this distraction. Is like trying to say, like, well, those people are doing black magic and secretly it's doing black magic. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So I think, it's so important for us to, like, I feel like if it's not coming through clearly, it's like this new thing that I'm learning how to communicate about, because soon enough, this level of awakening is going to happen on this planet. And what is so sad is, um, there's this big separation between spiritual people and New Age people and Christians and, truthers. Like there's so much fragmentation and we all have judgments on the other groups. But at the end of the day, it's actually there's people that are for God and then there are people that are against God. Like that's kind of it, really, when you step back from it. And so I think that yeah, understanding that there's different kinds of magic and that creation magic is really when you align to your God united self and you're asking for God, asking for the angelic realms to intercede, like what Abby was talking about just then. And then there is selfish magic. Selfish magic is the beginning of evil magic, because when you talk about ritual abuse and stuff, that's just like way off on the other end of the spectrum. But doing a manifestation ritual where you're offering, certain things and you're just like trying to manipulate nature for selfish gain, that's already entering into that realm, right? Because, as human beings, sometimes we don't know what's best for us. For me, I pray for God to align me to my soul's highest timeline, to what is right for me. Show me what I can do to help. Show me how I can be a vessel for God's love in this world. And, then I just end up living the most magical life. I'm always in like the most beautiful places and always so protected and meeting amazing people. But none of those things are ever on a vision board. I don't have a vision board and I've never made one.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just to say, like, there's so many different kinds of magic. And for me, I mean, I'm still working through this. I think at some point, maybe eventually I'll embody some sort of saint-like compassion, but I'm still kind of like pedophiles, like let's put them in one of these things and hang them, like I'm just because like I don't know. I don't know how we should deal with things like that as a society, but they're definitely conversations that we need to have.
I'll share how I view things in society.
I'd love to, please.
So I working with the angelics, I was introduced to a realm and they're called the angels of justice. And so certain things that they explained to me, and I actually was having a dinner with somebody who wasn't for the death penalty, right? But they also weren't for pedophilia and all these things. And then so they were kind of torn in between. I said, the way that I look at it and the way that it has been described to me is there are certain beings that come down here, and it's on the best thing that you can do for them when they are creating atrocities of such a level that the wiring is not right. The wiring in between the mind and the soul, it is so disaligned and unwired that the best thing that you can do, because there is no such thing as death, right, is send them back to source. They need to go back to source to be healed.
Yeah.
It needs to be rewired. And that's how I look at that, is I am fine sending those people back to source and allowing God to handle it. And that's not in a form of judgment, because they will handle it themselves when their soul sees them from that higher perspective and they're surrounded by a completely and totally love. They will rewire and fix and realign, and then they can move forward again. That's how I put it.
That's amazing. I mean, I was not expecting to go there in this conversation today, but here we are.
Here we are.
Incredible.
But I mean, yeah, it's the conversations that, and you brought up the truthers and the new age and spirituality. At the very heart of all of those different groups is a love for humanity.
Yes.
That's the commonality. And if we can just get to that level, at the most base level of, we have a love for humanity, we have a love for this planet, everything else are just, they're showing me like details in the cupboard is what they just said. Like, the rest just detailed in the cupboard, right? And we can figure that stuff out later.
Love
but
that.
The same exact thing. And it's just semantics in between there.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's my hope and prayer moving forward.
Same.
And, you know, I ask a lot when, you know, I work with my angelic team, and usually what I say to them is if I'm wanting to reach somebody or talk to somebody, I always say, just put my name on their heart.
Hmm.
If it's meant to align, then it will align through that way. If there's somebody that I'm wanting to be introduced to or work with, like just put my name on their heart. And if it's meant to be, then it will align and it will happen in that way.
That's beautiful. I love that.
So yeah, just a way to look at it. Um, and a tidbit for those listeners at home, I started doing this, and tell me if I think you'll resonate. It started coming in a couple months ago. I was just working on my general health and wanting to get to a place within my own physicality of where I felt good and my best. And so what I started doing was focused intention of calling in my highest potentiality of the program of my avatar.
Yes.
So I called in my highest version of this avatar, which I chosen. And I began to rework the energy in that way. And it was interesting to see how things began to shift and things
Amazing.
became a lot easier. So
Incredible.
yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So if you look at it, you know, if we're in a matrix, right? Everything's a program. Well, I want to be operating on my highest program.
Of course. I love that. It's amazing.
Yeah. So what I would love to obviously share with everyone where they can find you, but I would love if you would want to talk more about your Costa Rica experience that you have coming up shortly.
Yeah, so it's a very specific retreat. It's a fundraiser retreat, actually, because there's a very sacred piece of land here that we've been asked to steward. It's a sacred site. Without going too much into it, I believe this actually dovetails with what you were just saying. I believe that a lot of us have had lifetimes on this planet already when we were fortunate to be in a cave and we got to meditate our whole life and to activate very incredible powers in our avatar. Um, and I believe that we stored some of those soul pieces in the earth. And there are particular hub sites on the planet where you can actually access those parts of yourself. And so essentially, this new Stargate system, it's also a new Stargate system. The new Stargate system is coming online. They're calling it the Aurora Gateways because the old Stargates, were warred over and they're just, they've been kind of destroyed in some ways. And the angels were like, well, it's going to take a lot of work to heal them. Why don't we just make a new one? So it made a lot more sense actually for us to just build a new Stargate system that connects from outside of this universal construct so that the auroras who hold the perfect source eternal blueprints who's never fallen like this universe has through this current experiment, they're kind of using these new Stargate and ley line systems to fully rehabilitate the light body of the planet and humanity. And so through some of these places you can access that highest dimensional aspect of yourself, just like you were saying, and begin to pull that into your body. And this unlocks the dormant memories inside of your current vessel that allows for you to almost slide into the powers that you had in those lifetimes. The way that I see it is almost like you saved game in your video game in that life, and then you're kind of going back to the checkpoint in this avatar. Um, so it's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. The first 3 days are completely silent. We're going to be meditating in the Stargate with the land. And then the next 6 days will be half days of meditation. And then we're learning about how land consciousness is supporting our planetary ascension at this time, and why so many starseeds are going to be guided to land, have their retreat centers, how the retreat centers are going to be part of this planetary light technology that actually rehabilitates the planet. And it's through having a personal relationship with land, right? Again, seeing that every land has consciousness and you can literally have, like, it's like a friend. You can have a personal relationship with land, and your land, wherever it is holding certain keys and time capsules for you. So when you get there, the land will share things with you that you will then, remember and come into this next phase of your own personal mission. Is a very profound process to be steward of land. It's like having a dragon. That's how I feel like. It's like having a dragon ally. So yeah.
I love that. I love that you're dipping into land guardians. When I often go into, especially some sacred or ancient sites, I will connect with a land guardian that is there. I actually had a land guardian when we moved into the house that I'm living in right now, and it was the first week, and this little orange ball like flew, like came in from outside, and they were in my kitchen, and it was started going like just going around from a room. I'm like, whoa, like what are you? What are you doing? And it just stopped and said, I'm vetting you. Like you're new here. And it essentially, and he just continued. I'm like, okay, that's fine, And he went room to room and kind of checked out all my family. And then he came right back to the back door where he came in. He goes, okay. He just zoomed right out, and it looked almost like the Lorax, right? Little orange fluffy ball. And what somebody showed me a picture that they took down in the Angkor Wat ruins is actually there's ruins further away that not many people know about. And he showed me this picture, and inside one of the temples was this beautiful orb. And I'm just looking, I'm like, oh my God, that's the land guardian. And you can just feel into this land guardian. I'm like, oh, I wish I was there and have a conversation with it. But I love that you guys are holding this, holding the space for it. That resonates with the new Stargates 100%. I can feel that. That makes absolute sense. And I love that you're going to be stewards to bring that in. So thank you. Thank you. Work that the vitally important work that you do. I was so excited to have you on the show and to talk to you. It's been so long.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. We went just about everywhere in this conversation.
We did. I love it. Spirit always leads it. Outside of Costa Rica, how can everyone find you?
So I'm at Earthstar.academy on most social medias. YouTube and Instagram are my primary, and Earthstar.academy is my website.
That's wonderful. I encourage everyone to check it out. I mean, you have a huge library of content and curriculum. I was looking through everything the other day. So just thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your work.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for this amazing podcast. This is such a beautiful space. You need to hold such a vast space for all these different things to make sense in the same place. So
yes, yeah, it is. It's healing that collective witch wound that so many of us have from past incarnations to move forward and reclaim those voices. So I always end with this poem that came in. The ashes going higher, the smoke filling the sky. Oh, you didn't see my ancestors coming for me behind. As you light the flame of fear, burning away the inner voice rumbling near. Oh, you thought turning us to dust. We'd lay in the ground, burying your lust. But a fire burns in our blood, memories drum through our veins. We are the burnt witches returned, the ones you thought you burned away. But our voices rise together in echo from a deep place, our hearts, they do not tremble. We've come to awaken and help you grow. So thank you so much for coming on, Z. Thank you everybody for listening. If you guys want to hear more, please remember to like and subscribe. Z, I wish you all the best of luck in Costa Rica, and thank you again.